everyone, and welcome to another episode of Naked Nuclear, Season 2, which is all about nuclear education. We're highlighting different community colleges, four-year colleges, trade schools, and professional programs that help you get a nuclear education. Today, I'm excited to talk with Kelli Davis, who's heading up the Cape Fear Community College nuclear program. She just took the helm, and I got to learn a little bit about her background. And I'm super excited to kind of go through what Cape Fear is creating for new students in nuclear power technology. Thank you, Kelli, for being on the show and being able to sit down and talk to us.
I appreciate the invite.
Of course. Can you share a little about your background? I know we talked before, your background's in chemistry. I'm not a chemistry girl, but more of a physics girly. So I think that's really impressive.
I think physics is impressive, but I appreciate it. I got my undergraduate degree from Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. I'm from Chicago, specialized in forensics. And when I graduated, I started trying to get into the industry. And I was having, a little bit of a difficult time. And so won't bore you with the details, but I ended up in California. And my first job where I got hired on full time was as a nuclear chemist. It was a small family owned company that had just been bought out by a German company. We made radioactive standards and we pretty much did it for industry. We did some medical standards for like instrumentation, like MRI machines. I made ones used for friskers, source checks, and calibration standards. When I left there to move back to Chicago after I got married and started a family, I was looking for a nuclear chemist position. Never seen anything like that, never heard of anything like that in all my upbringing. And lo and behold, was looking for a job on monster.com and found a nuclear chemist position. And I was taken aback. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I applied. I remember telling my husband, I just found my next job. 3 months later, because nothing happens quickly in nuclear, they had reached out to me to take the exam and interview. And like I shared with you when I showed up for the interview, back then you didn't have GPS on phones. I had to print out directions on MapQuest. And so I'm following these directions and I'm going all through these cornfields and, and way, way off outside of Chicago, DeKalb County, finally pulled up to the guardhouse and the person had a rifle. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, I hope I'm in the right place. I interviewed, got the job offer, and I've been in nuclear power ever since. I'm still Facebook friends with the man who hired me. Cape Fear did a spotlight on me and I shared it on social media. He responded and I said, I owe it all to you. Like, you started my nuclear power career. So I'm like, thank you so much, because I didn't know anything about it until, he extended the invitation for me to come and interview. So I've been doing it ever since.
That is amazing. How long had you worked in nuclear? You said you retired from nuclear and now you're at Cape Fear. How long were you in nuclear?
I got that job in 2002 and left in 2024. So around 20 years working in nuclear power and radioactivity. I left in April of last year. It was time to segue and do something else. I have 4 children, 3 of which are grown and gone, and my youngest was home alone, homeschooling, kind of on autopilot, and really just being an only child for the first time. It was kind of hard on him with all his brothers being gone and homeschooling, and it was just a good time for me to segue out. I started my own business, sitting at home, working. He transitioned into high school, wanted to go to brick and mortar, and me wanting to support that. So I'm just working and I come across the job post. The irony was it was something I always wanted to pitch to the school. When I was ready, I said, I need to figure out who I can contact. I knew what the industry needed. When I was in my last role, I did some hiring and it was a struggle trying to find qualified candidates. And so I felt like we were missing the opportunity to get people when they were in school and groom them for the industry. It was something that I wanted to go to the administrators and say, hey, have you thought about a nuclear technology program? I already had one. So when I saw the job post, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. How did I not know this program was here? That's when I applied. I started doing all the work I needed to do to make sure that my application and resume was seen, because this was like my retirement dream job.
What is your role currently at Cape Fear?
I'm the nuclear technology program director, and I also teach.
Amazing. And so you saw this problem with the pipeline. You're like trying to struggle with qualified candidates and hiring and trying to get that K through 12 age range. When you stepped into this role, you probably had 20 plus years in nuclear. had different ideas to make that happen. So what are you bringing to Cape Fear, and kind of what's, what's the main thing that you want to kind of help students with this program?
Right now, the program we have is a nuclear maintenance program, birthed out of a need that GE Hitachi, now GE Vernova Hitachi, they're still working on their name because they got a merger that's happened. And so at the time that I had applied for the position, I saw it was a nuclear technology program. I didn't realize it was a nuclear maintenance tech program. Now that I'm in the role and I've dissected the curriculum, the biggest thing that I need my current students to take away from is making sure that they're prepared to transition into industry. Right now, we require work-based learning opportunity in the spring. The springtime is the outage time. So that's when the reactors get shut down for refueling. While they're offline being refueled, we try to get as much maintenance done as we can. It takes a lot of workers to make that happen. So they get a lot of contractors on site, do that work, and contractors go from outage to outage and they live on the road supporting the refueling outages. I need to make sure my students understand that is what is next for them and that they're prepared for what that looks like. The biggest thing is that I want to make sure people, when they come into the program, understand this is not a job. This is a career and it's going to change. If done correctly, it will change your lifestyle, right? Because nuclear is so structured and it requires you to alter the way that you view safety. And so if you don't, the best thing you can do for yourself is not have a switch that you turn on and off. The best thing you can do for yourself is practice like you play. Just align your life to be safe in all the things you do. And then that way, when you're at work, it translates, right? Because there's certain things like when you're on a nuclear power plant site, different plants have different requirements. But for the most part, across the board, you're going to find you can't look at your phone and walk, right? You can't walk while looking at your cell phone. That is like a huge no-no. A lot of plants make you walk through crosswalks. There's no cutting across the parking lot. It becomes ingrained in you to where now that I'm not even on nuclear power plant sites anymore, a lot of times I look at my phone, I'll stop at the grocery store, going across the street. I'm going to go through the crosswalk, right? It just becomes ingrained in you. And so that's the biggest takeaway because some people are going to struggle with that because in their mind, they're going to be like, this is stupid. It doesn't matter if it's stupid or not in your mind. This is how the industry operates. You either align yourself or you won't. Same with coaching. You have to be receptive to coaching in nuclear. If you're in your ego, as soon as somebody tries to give you coaching because they perceive that you're doing something that's unsafe, you're going to be combative and it's not going to work out. So the behaviors when it comes to a nuclear career are huge. Everything else we can teach you. You either align or you don't.
Yeah, that's super insightful from an outsider perspective. Like if I'm a student, maybe just out of high school, considering college, considering community college, and I'm looking at nuclear, I don't necessarily know what's in store. That's helpful to understand the mindset of the nuclear industry as well. For Cape Fear, for the program, if I'm that student, what can I expect as an overview of what courses I'd be taking, classes, expectations within the program?
So, because it's a maintenance program, we have welding classes, electrical engineering, like engineering technology. Right now, I'm teaching power fluids. So, that's hydraulics and pneumatics. Where you're going to have some nuclear classes. Some of the nuclear classes that we teach are primary systems, where we're pretty much talking about the reactor and all the systems that touch it, like the safety systems. And then we also teach reactor theory that teaches you how the fission process happens and what all is happening inside the vessel with the fuel. And then we teach non-destructive examination, which is how a lot of the testing happens with the vessel and the other metal parts. You can't just disassemble it and inspect it. You have to have other ways of inspecting, like buried piping and different components. It's to support the outage industry and what the companies need them to support. What I am also bringing into it, because some of the feedback that I'm getting is letting me know that we have to do better with students' mechanical aptitude. I need to make sure that my students' minds work the way we need their mind to work for you to be successful in that industry, right? Because there's certain exams you have to take in nuclear to qualify. If you want to be an operator, there's the POS exams, the Power Operators Selective exam. A lot of that is how well you can accurately answer questions under duress. How accurate can you be in the heat of the moment? So you have like this ridiculous number of questions that you have to answer in a very short period of time. You have to answer a minimum number and so much has to be correct. They want to make sure that as an operator, if you have to shut down the reactor in an emergent situation, you have to be accurate and you have to be fast. So they want to make sure that they have people that before they even bring them in, they can work. You just have to have a certain aptitude just to work in the industry. And then same with maintenance, they have the mass exam. So there's certain exams, selection exams that you have to pass. My thing is to work with my students to make sure they can pass those tests. And then the behaviors while they're in the training program. Because if I don't prepare them, then when they show up to the plant site, it's going to be shocking for them when the first time somebody yells at them, like in a respectful way, but somebody might stop and say, hey, please hold the handrail. They'll be like, are you serious right now? They're very serious. You don't go up and down the stairs without holding the handrail at a nuclear power plant. If somebody twists their ankle at Walmart, it doesn't make the news. If somebody twists their ankle in the parking lot of a nuclear power plant, it can make the news. And so our focus on safety is it's something I can't even vocalize. I could not see myself working in any other industry because no other industry has the same layers of safety that nuclear does. That's how serious safety is at a nuclear power plant. It's really real. It's almost shocking, but it's there to keep you safe. We all want to make sure everybody goes home in the same condition, if not better, than they came to work in.
Yeah,
So that's what you can expect. You can expect that in the program. I'm going to get you ready.
Yeah, and I think that's perfect in terms of student expectations. You mentioned mechanical aptitude. If I have no background in welding or never worked on my car before, can I still apply if I'm interested, if I don't have a background in hands-on stuff?
Oh, absolutely. I was good at assembling. So if you gave me furniture in a box, I could put it together. That's the mechanical aptitude portion. When I got hired at the Brunswick plant in North Carolina, I got hired on to be an operator. I had never operated in my life. I was, like I said, I was a chemist. When they hired me, they sent me to take the test. I just have that kind of mind. So I did well on the exam. I interviewed and they hired me. They put me in the class. Pretty much everybody was in class, either a former mechanic or Navy nuclear. I was well behind. I didn't know what a pump curve was. I didn't know anything about different valves. I didn't know anything about throttling character, like nothing. This was all, what's the word I'm looking for? Terminology I'd never heard before, right? I'd worked in nuclear, but I had never been an operator. And so when I worked in nuclear as a chemist, when I would ask questions, what is that? How does this work? Like it was pretty much, here's your sample panel. Here's how the water interacts with everything. Here's what you're looking for, and here's what your results mean. But as far as how the whole plant worked, we got a basic systems class that was 2 weeks. That's not nearly long enough to learn how an entire nuclear power plant works. If you have the willingness to learn, the tests are there to make sure you have the basic aptitude. But with the aptitude and willingness, anybody can work in nuclear power. The misconception is it's amazing how many people think you have to go to school for it. Most people that are operators in nuclear power plants come from the Navy, where the Navy gave them the training. And that was all based off their aptitude test, right? They took the test to get into the Navy based off their score. They're like, hey, we can use this person in nuclear. And so they would recruit them for that. But as far as the commercial plants, a lot of people started off sweeping and mopping the floors and worked their way up. Now we hire people with degrees, but like in chemistry, a lot of times we'll hire somebody with a chemistry degree with no nuclear experience. So yeah, nuclear power plants have everything. We have project managers, a lot of construction workers. The biggest thing though is the level of safety. I just can't express that enough. The things that you do in the regular world are just not going to translate to a nuclear power plant. The compensation is worth aligning yourself. Plumbers, nurses, we have a doctor that comes in periodically because the operators have to pass certain fit tests. So it's a small city within a city. So they employ all kinds, admins, us as operators, we're fire brigade because we're first responders. So you name it, whatever you think of in a small city, you have it at a nuclear power plant. And you don't have to have a nuclear technology degree to work.
Gotcha. I think what was super helpful is understanding how wide the nuclear space is. Again, like from this perspective of like, I'm straight out of high school, I'm a student, or, maybe I work as in construction and I want to maybe pivot into nuclear. It seems like there's so many different, avenues that I can go to. For the Cape Fear program, how long is that, from the time I get into the door to the time I'm, have gone through all my classes and courses?
So right now the program is designed to be 2 years. The second spring, so you go through your first year, and when you get to that following spring, that's when we do work-based learning. My goal, and I'm still working through I'm working on potentially some curriculum changes so that it's not just a nuclear maintenance program. We're going to try to tailor it so we can bring some radiation protection personnel through there. And people want to do other things besides just being maintenance tech. But right now, it's the way that it's laid out is you go do your work-based learning the following spring after your first year. And then from there, you should be able to come back and finish out whatever couple classes you have left in that summer and graduate. My goal is to move it so that when they do work-based learning in the spring, if they get a job offer, they can stay and don't have any more classes. Right now, the way the curriculum is essentially laid out, I have not done my first advising session yet with my students. So I have to kind of get a feel for when the classes are offered and how much I can reconfigure what the school has pretty much laid out as like the map. But yeah, right now it's pretty much 2 years and you're done.
Okay. And then the work-based program, that's like me going to a power plant and getting on the job experience.
Yes. Right now we have a partnership with Sonic Systems, and Sonic Systems does a lot of vessel work, reactor vessel work for GE. Wherever GE is supporting outages, Sonic Systems does inspections, maintenance on control rod drive mechanisms. My students will travel with Sonic Systems to whatever outages they have planned for that spring and do whatever level of work and Sonic Systems will then take them with GE and assess what their aptitude is and kind of utilize them wherever they see fit. Because the thing about nuclear power plants, you can only do what you're qualified. You can only perform the work you're qualified to do. By being students, never worked in nuclear power before, they're limited in scope as far as, them what work they can do was unescorted, right? They can't just go out in the plant and start doing stuff. Yeah, they got to work under somebody. And as they're working under people, they'll start getting hours, which will then translate into training certifications, and it'll start beefing up their resume for them.
Okay, gotcha. I think this is super helpful just to kind of understand this workflow from like, all right, I'm a student. These are the expectations I have. This is what I can do in the classes and courses. This is how the work might look. What people are coming to your programs? Are there people from the Navy? Is it straight out of high school? Who's making up your student body so far?
Most are straight out of high school. I have a couple that are non-traditional students. They're what's what I'm looking for. They're the hardest for me to kind to work with as far as like the work-based learning, because the work-based learning, I don't know where these outages are gonna be located. So I don't know where the person is gonna end up having to travel to, right? And so if you have a family, people can't just pack up and yeah. So I'm looking to expand the current work-based learning so I can be more supportive of my non-traditional students. But I got a couple students that are in high school still because they're doing dual enrollment, looking at the nuclear certificate, but the majority of my students are straight out of high school.
Gotcha. And then for the admissions process, I guess I would just go to the admissions page and fill all of that out. I'm guessing that's pretty straightforward.
With the state of North Carolina, I'm not 100% sure because my kids did not go this route. But what I've heard is if you went to high school in North Carolina, you're pretty much guaranteed admission to the community college. Yeah. So, but I tell you, K-Fit Community College, I've never seen anything like it. And I come from Chicago has like a whole city college like network. All the city colleges are kind of linked together. And the programs that this school offers between the truck driving, cosmetology, interior design is in the same building that we're in. The hands-on programs that this school has are absolutely amazing. So yeah, I was trying to encourage my kids to kind of go the community college route just because when I saw the school, I've been so impressed with all the programs and hands-on opportunities. If you're in North Carolina, you can go to the community college, but the admissions process, go to the school webpage, admissions, put in an application, and pretty much goes from there. And I know GE has been pretty instrumental in providing funds for scholarships for the nuclear technology program. There is money there if students need assistance with affordability.
Perfect. That was going to be my next question on scholarship availability, financial aid, all that jazz. It sounds like because there's so many businesses in the area that there are more scholarship opportunities. It sounds like everybody's connected and linked together.
Nuclear's really taken off, and I suspect it's only going to become more vast. And that's like with UNCW and NC State have this 2+2 program that they're working hand in hand with as far as nuclear, trying to help feed the nuclear industry. There's consortiums that are fun. I'm sure you know because you're in the nuclear world, but it was one I was going to tell you about. It skips my mind. I'll come back to it. But there's something else that is forming. Oh, NC State. So because we are expanding right now, because to build a nuclear power plant is extremely expensive. Takes a lot to get licenses from the NRC. It's not financially feasible as much as we need new nuclear. Nuclear is the stability of the grid. Our carbon footprint is almost nothing. The carbon footprint that we have with nuclear power is based off the heavy equipment and machinery that we use. But as far as the megawatts we put on the grid, that is carbon free. The nuclear fuel does not generate carbon when it burns to create the steam to turn the turbine. We have a very small carbon footprint in comparison to all the green energies, contrary to what a lot of people believe. And as a result of expanding and building new nuclear, capitalize on the low carbon footprint. We're doing small modular reactors. NC State just announced they got the simulator for the new BWRs that are coming out for the small modular reactors, as well as they have a partnership with EPRI. They got some funding to figure out what workforce development is going to look like for that new nuclear. So there's a lot happening, a lot expanding, there's a lot of working together to try to create this pipeline of future nuclear workers to, essentially replace those that are retiring because it's just the replacement rate is just not there.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And I guess that was another one of my questions. If I go through this program, I start off and, I do nuclear maintenance. Do I have to stay in nuclear maintenance or can I branch out? And what does that branching out look like from radiation protection technician to other fields?
So it depends. The first plant I worked at was a union plant. When I was hired into the role, I was hired with the anticipation that I was going to have upward mobility. And so, but I didn't know the difference. When I hired into a union plant, it takes a lot to go from the union side to the non-union side. And during the time that I was there, I actually saw one of my technicians, my coworkers, he promoted up to the lab supervisor, but he had been there 18 years. Now he didn't have a college degree, but he'd been there 18 years. And so, I'm 6 years in and I'm being told, be patient, be patient. I'm like, I was hired for upward mobility. I've been impatient as I think I'm going to be. Because at that age, I was just a little too young. I didn't understand. That's why I really want to help people find nuclear on purpose. Because I found it on accident and I didn't know what I was walking into. You walk in as a 26, 27-year-old to a job that's paying you more money you ever thought you were going to make in that industry, right? Chemistry does not pay $30, $40 an hour with a bachelor's degree, but nuclear does. It pays even more now. It was hard for somebody to tell me how much money I was going to make for the rest of my life because we got a union contract that says you get $1 raise every year at this time. And if you forward project, you know how much money you're going to make for the rest of your life. I was more ambitious than that, right? So I ended up leaving. And as a result, then I ended up hiring it as an operator, even with no operations experience. And because of my background, at the time that I hired in as an operator, I was working on my master's degree in chemistry. And they felt they could send me to class to be a senior reactor operator. At Brunswick, a few people they went to other departments, especially if you're an operator, you can pretty much go do anything else. As long as department can support your transition, right? Nuclear doesn't overstaff. So your patience has to come into play. You have to say, okay, I'm interested in doing something different. It might not happen this time, but maybe once you let your supervisors know that, some transitioning around is what you're interested in, they'll work with you. You might have to wait a couple years or whatever, but the opportunities eventually will present themselves to you. But it also is dependent on how well what your ethics are, what your work ethics are. If you're showing up and you're giving 100% and you're working your butt off and you're showing, that you're really a go-getter, why wouldn't they want to work with you and help you go and do some other things, right? But if you're on some kind of progression, some support plan where you're not meeting your minimum requirements, yeah, they're not going to let you move laterally or promote because you're not cutting it in your current position. So your performance has to be there and they will work with you. I've seen people go to maintenance, I've seen people go to chemistry. When I was a supervisor in chemistry, I hired a couple security guards because Brunswick was having an attrition situation. And so rather than hire people that I could foresee them, because nuclear is a different world and people get excited about the pay, but the pay will only keep you for so long, right? People acclimate a lot faster than they think they will to that new rate of pay. And then it becomes about job satisfaction, whether or not you stay, right? You got to love what you're doing. You got to like who you work for. That's the only way you're going to be happy and stay in your role. Bring somebody in with a PhD, and now you're about to come and sample water all day long. That's not going to be satisfying to them. And if they try to assure you it will, I'm telling you it won't. When you're hiring for these positions, there's so much training involved. The rate of pay is higher than average. We're investing in you. We need to know you're going to stay, right? So that's where we start getting creative with our hiring. That was why I was really pushing to hire the security guards. They were already on site. They kind of already knew where the bodies were buried, right? Because everywhere you work is going to have issues. They knew where the bodies were already buried. We didn't have to worry about them leaving because of them not wanting to stay in the area or any other reason why somebody might leave based off of working at a nuclear power plant. It was just whether or not we could teach them the chemistry part. And we taught them the chemistry part. So I've seen people move around.
Gotcha.
As a long answer.
It brings up another, I think, important question is how, okay, I'm coming out of high school. I don't really know too much about anything. Or, maybe I'm one of those non-traditional students. How do I figure out what I like and I don't like? How do I understand if I'm a research kind of person or more of the operator type? From your perspective, how have you seen people, even yourself, figure out where they fit?
So I would say if you have any questions, like if you're not sure what discipline you're interested in, like some people just love engineering and solving problems. It's just a matter of where they're going to do that at, what industry they're going to do that in. I was a lab rat. I didn't care as long as I was doing analysis, right? If you're not sure, you just know you want to work in the nuclear industry and you're not sure exactly which discipline you want to fall in, then I would strongly encourage lining yourself with the outage workers. There are companies that just support outages and you will get an opportunity to go in. And I mean, you start in as a deconner, which is like housekeeping, dealing with contamination. You can go in doing decon. A lot of times people go in as fire watches. There's a lot of low level jobs you can just walk in and do with very little training, that then once you're in there, you can start meeting people, seeing how the plants operate, see if you want to be at a pressurized water reactor versus a boiling water reactor. The boilers are a lot dirtier, right? The steam is radioactive. So the radiation spreads everywhere, as opposed to a pressurized water reactor, where it's very localized and contained. Areas contaminated at a boiler are going to be clean at a pressurized water reactor. So, like the turbine building, for example, for a lot of PWRs, the turbine building's outside, right? You will never see that at a boiler because everything is just too contaminated for it to essentially be outside. So it's enclosed and encapsulated. But just getting in at the outages, talking to people in the industry. And because there's not a lot of information out there, I'm hoping that will change things like what you're doing with your podcast, maybe interviewing people who do those different disciplines so they can talk about what they do, can shed some light. But other than getting in there and really just seeing and talking to people, it's going to be hard for me to say, hey, this is how you would figure out what you want to do, because it's just not an industry that has historically had a lot of visibility.
Gotcha. That networking aspect, learning from other people makes a lot of sense. Starting off understanding the different types of reactors and growing your interest from there. Back to the students at Cape Fear, how big is the program? How many students do you have right now and year over year?
I have 9 actively in the program. My position was vacant for a while. It's hard because, again, nuclear just is an industry that pays better than most. To find somebody who's qualified to run the program, people, most people are in industry already, and it's hard for them to take like the pay that, and I was in a unique position because I had left nuclear to work for myself. And so it really didn't matter what the school offered me as far as pay. This was kind of just living in my purpose, taking this role. So, but if I had to put a number to it, the salary I have now is half what I was making when I was in nuclear, and a third if you count my benefits, right? So it's hard to get people to walk away from that salary to teach. Because of that, there's sometimes there's some gaps in there as far as this program being fluid. And as a result, several students didn't finish. I'm trying to solidify it so our attrition rate is lower. I'll probably have more in the program that aren't currently enrolled than what I have that are enrolled. So my recruiting efforts are like about to be on steroids. I really just need to get students in the program because we need the bodies in the industry. And then the other thing is getting the right students. People go to nursing because they know they want to be a nurse. People go to engineering because they know they want to be an engineer. They already know about these programs. They come up as children saying, when I grow up, I'm going to be an engineer. When I grow up, I'm going to be a nurse, a doctor. People don't grow up saying, I want to be a nuclear worker. Getting out there and letting them know the jobs exist, and then having to weed through the people who want to do it and it's just not a good fit for them versus the people who want to do it and it absolutely is a good fit for them. And then finding people who don't even know they want to do it, they're a good fit for it, and then trying to get them to at least consider it. So
Yeah. And
recruiting.
Yeah, that recruiting piece seems critical. People know they want to be a nurse, but they don't know they want to be a nuclear worker. So yeah, I think that with this podcast and the industry creating better expectations of helping students realize that the character traits that I have, if I really like safety and I really like kind of doing things by the book, strong work ethic, and I also like to get paid because money is nice, then that nuclear might be that realm for me. I was really excited at the beginning of this episode when you were talking about the expectations. Can you get people to see this job from a different perspective? You fit that role. I'm excited to get this episode out to have people kind of understand a little bit more behind the curtains, because it's really not an industry or job that's on every billboard or has commercials.
And it's essential. It was important to me that my children were proud of what their mom did for a living, right? And it's also extremely important to me having a family that anytime I'm spent away from the family is of value and is purposeful. And in nuclear, we are the stability of society. People don't realize it, but Since we've had artificial light, when the lights go out, the chaos starts. I mean, they make movies about it. You know, you got this blackout, next thing you know, everybody's running rampant. To know you're providing stability to society. You know, it's like even during that whole pandemic time frame, the doctors, you know, they were being inundated, but we were keeping the power on so the doctors could do their jobs. You can't have respirators running. You can't have people on life support. You can't do any of that without a solid source of power. Even if you go on the backup is only going to last so long. You have to have the stability of the grid, and we provide that in this industry. I always felt proud of the time spent away from home wasn't in vain. Even when hurricanes would roll through and my family would be, you know, you guys are evacuating, right? And I'm like, well, I'm sending the kids, but I gotta go to work. The health and safety of the public is my priority. You can't take all the great benefits that come around along with nuclear without then accepting the inherent hazards, the things that are not so great that go along with it as well. One of the biggest ones is just that when the inclement weather and things are coming, we need the bodies at the plant site to make sure that if we do have to shut down an emergency situation, we have the staffing requirements to do that. And sometimes that means you can't be with your family. So I put my kids on a plane, make sure they're safe, and I'm taking my butt down to work to make sure the plant is safe, right? And you got to be willing to make that sacrifice. Some people love that because it makes their life feel more purposeful. Some people are like, no, that's too much. I'm not doing that for a job. And that's why I say nuclear is not a job, it's a career, a lifestyle.
Yeah, that's funny because I was gonna ask, do you have any advice for students? But like you're already like just shelling out advice already. But I think, yeah, like anything else you want students to know, whether they're non-traditional, whether they're coming out of high school, you know, whether they're in a completely different industry like nursing, how do you get people to understand the industry and what comes with it?
Nuclear needs all the things. So don't assume the industry or what the career field that you're interested in, that there's no need for it in nuclear. It absolutely is. The only difference with nuclear is that you're working with radiation. You're working in sometimes the areas are more contaminated than others, depending on, like I said, if it's a boil of water or a pressurized water reactor. But nuclear has needs for construction workers, it has needs for project managers, it has needs for administrators, it has needs for nurses. If it exists in the regular world, it exists in the nuclear world. For me, you know, feeling proud to say I work in nuclear power. It's a bit of a flex, you know, and when you say, yeah, I work in a nuclear power plant, people just kind of like, whoa, they don't meet that every day. No matter what industry you work in, no matter what you do, you're going to have things that are great about it and things that are not so great. You're going to have difficult people. You don't get to choose the people you work with, just like you don't choose your family, right? These are people you have to get along with. But nuclear compensates you in a way that most other industries just don't compensate you for those same issues you're going to deal with, right? And so, you know, as frustrated as you might get sometimes is, you know, some days you're just like, I'm not doing this like any other industry. And then you get your paycheck and you're like, yep, I can do it for 2 more weeks. Right. But besides that, I will share it's you can do it. I didn't know nuclear. So it wasn't something I looked at and felt capable of doing because I didn't see anybody like me doing it. I didn't know anything about it. So I want people to know it exists and you can do it. There's nothing special about me. When people meet me and they find out what I did for a living, they make this assumption you must be really smart, you must be this, you must be that. I am a regular person, right? I might have my brain might work a little bit different than most people's, especially after spending all the years in nuclear. I'm not a brilliant. I've worked with really intelligent people. I'm a little better than average intelligence, but for the most part, I'm just regular. I had to work hard in college to graduate. I studied my butt off, and I studied in groups. I don't think I know I would not have made it through my curriculum in chemistry as an undergrad if not for the group of women that I also studied with, because it was only like 6 of us in the program and we banded together and made sure we got through. And without them, I would not have made it, right? So I'm not just this genius that people try to put the label me as. My intelligence is a little better than average, especially when you see on the internet what the average person is doing, like, yep, I'm smarter than that, but I'm not a genius. The other piece is representation. There's not a lot of people who look like us. It's more than we think, but we're just not advertising it. On average, the people you see working in nuclear power are going to be opposite us. They're going to be Caucasian, male. But we are in these industries and we are doing it and excelling in every avenue. I want to make sure people who come across this information that are even considering it don't talk themselves out of the opportunity. Don't answer your own question. That's the worst thing you can do in nuclear. We're taught, don't answer your own question. If you have a question, expand the team, ask. If you even are considering nuclear, don't automatically think that you would not qualify, you're not capable, you're not able. Let's see. Talk to me, or anybody else in your circle who you might have access to. Let's talk about it. Let's see. There are tests we can take. And even if we're not cutting it with that, there are ways that we can study that makes it attainable. Don't automatically assume you're not smart enough, good enough. You are. You just got to be willing to do the work. There's plenty of people in medical school that are average intelligence. C's get degrees, as they say. It's whether you're willing to do the work, study, and close any gaps you have. You can be successful in this industry.
Wow. Yeah, amazing. I think the idea that people count themselves out before they're even in the game is super critical, especially for women, especially for Black women, especially for any minorities as well. Just being able to be like, hey, no, just start doing it. For students looking to, learn more, should they just go Cape Fear Community College and then, kind of go from there?
They can, and then my contact information is on there. There's so much information out there about nuclear. If they are interested in the program, learning more, and talking to me about the career path I have had, I've gone through great measures to get where, and there's much easier paths that I want to help people take, much less expensive paths at that. Because you can get into this industry with little to no college education. There's no point in taking on all that debt unnecessarily. They can go on the website, Cape Fear Community College, or they can email me. My email address is KN Davis, and that's Kelly Nikita, KN Davis 245 at mail.cfcc.edu. Which is also
perfect. I'll put that in the show notes as well so people can click through, see. Thank you so much for this episode. I learned a lot. It's super helpful for you to share about this program, to become a director, to kind of, shape this career path, but then also give so much information on the expectations and the culture of the industry. I think because it's not highly advertised, we don't really know the expectations within nuclear. We say it's safe, but what does that mean? Thank you for spelling out what that looks like, how students can change their mindset of the idea of purpose in an industry and in a career. I think all of these things are super helpful, that so if people are listening to this, they can hear whether or not this resonates with them, whether or not they're like, oh, actually, I might have to see about about this program. I think that's something the industry is lacking, that interpersonal storytelling and connection of what the industry entails. So thank you so much for being able to hop on today and give that feedback.
You're welcome. And I hope if nothing else, people also take away that nuclear is incredibly safe. I think that story that was written back in the 60s and the 70s with the birth of nuclear power has been well rewritten so that people understand that this is not something to fear. It's powerful. We in the industry respect what it does, so we treat it accordingly, but there's nothing to fear because it is so, like I said, I couldn't see myself working in any other industry. The safety behaviors are just not there like nuclear.
Thank you so much, Kelly, for hopping on today, talking about Cape Fear. I hope students listen to this, get it into different schools and reach out.
Thank you, Danielle. I appreciate this opportunity. What you're doing for nuclear, because I've never seen anything like this. So this is what we need. We need that visibility. So thank you.
Of course.